miserable.
So the question is this going to be the first one? Because I want to talk about that we're in a new studio office space.
Yes.
So this is the next one. Let's just make this one the next one, even if it sucks. All right, welcome back to the Miserable Podcast. This is a numbered episode of which I cannot remember.
8.
Is it episode 8?
If we're doing this, the next one it is.
It is?
Yeah.
We don't like committing to things, so this is probably episode 8. We got a good topic for you today, but before we get into it, you cannot sip your tea in the microphone. Paulie, you are the worst podcaster.
I'll get better. I don't know what I'm doing.
That I've ever podcasted with.
The setup.
You're right. You'll figure it out.
The setup.
That was a good setup. But before we get to the topic today, we are recording from our new office/studio space.
Shout out Brickyard.
Shout out to Brickyard in Woodbridge, Virginia, and David, all these wonderful people we have met. We actually signed the lease about 24 hours ago. And then I'm getting ready to go out of the country. So we're like, man, we got to record some podcasts while I'm gone. And that was today or never, basically. And then who was it? Was it last night? Somebody texted in the Miserable Company group text and said, are we recording at the new space?
That would be me.
And I was just like, wait, yes, I guess we are. So today has been me running around from my house to my parents' house where we recorded some of the other podcasts because they don't have children running around, except for when my wife brings them over while we're recording, and it kind of defeats the purpose.
This is long-winded.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, and here we are talking about, let's make a shorter one today. And here I am going off for 10 minutes. But yeah, we're in a new office space. We're going to be doing a video kind of showing off where we're recording now, where we're going to be working, the conference rooms, the kitchen, and
He's trying to set the.
I'm trying
down
to-
in the
so
place
lightly.
where Paulie makes
I need
this
a
tea
coaster.
that makes so much noise. If you haven't listened to any other episodes, probably once an episode, I either give Paulie a look that you can see on the video, or I say something to him about his tendency to hit the table when he's talking. We need to get him like a special mic suspended from the ceiling or something that he just can't touch.
Yeah.
A lavalier or something.
You're like Dwight in that one episode of The Office when he's just like,
Oh, yeah. Blood alone moves the wheels of history.
All right. So as we alluded to earlier, Paulie doesn't know what he's doing, and he's trying to figure it out. So that's today's episode.
That's my life.
Topic. No, I'm in the same boat. I basically pretend like I know how to do things, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But I think that's pretty much what we're going to land on today as far as this topic goes. So the topic today is figuring it out / not knowing what you're doing, but just doing it anyway.
yeah.
Paulie, we've had these conversations before, and we've probably had them before too. What is your first thought when we talk about just figuring it out? Like where does your mind take you?
Everywhere. It's like anything that I've tried to do that, especially involving like creative work or technology things, I kind of, because, and not just like with my friend circles, but in family and other responsibilities and other people, because I know and I enjoy technology, I'm usually thrown into a situation where they're like, hey, can you do this? They're like, I don't know how to do it. I'm like, I don't either. And they're like, oh, well, you know this. And it's like, it's not the same thing. But I'm having to I don't know how to do it, but I'm having to try and figure it out and just do my best.
And what about professionally? Like, have you ever taken jobs that you were like, I'm not even sure if I know how to do this, but I'll give it a shot?
Yeah, all the time.
Like what? Give me an example. All the time. He's never had a job he's known how to do.
I did a job, it's probably like 6 years ago for a candle company on the West Coast. It was like this masculine candle sort of thing. They smelled like cologne. They were poured in whiskey glasses. And I just reached out to them on Instagram because they didn't have
I
any.
actually really like that idea.
Which idea? Oh, the candles and the
Yeah.
whiskey glasses. Yeah. They didn't have any good imagery. So I was like, if you guys ever need some pictures, I'd love to work with you. And they reached out to me. And this was my first experience in any type of commercial related photography, staging, working. Like I was just doing at the time, just doing weddings and some portrait work. So they were like, oh yeah, well, that would be awesome. We have these 3 ideas. We like these aspects of some of your style, what some of the things we've seen. Can you put together basically 2 different scenes, including our candles, and then do some product photography, like on white and on black? I hadn't done any of that, really. Especially like the product photography, which is like the on white, because that's way more complex, because you got to deal with, like, if you're trying to have a clean image, and especially if it's a glass bottle or a glass cup in this case, there's reflections, but you don't want to lose like edges and certain details with overlighting it. So I did some research online, and I built this little cube basically, and then put all the stuff in it, like cheap dollar store poster board, and then some fabric from Michael's and stuff like that, and built a light box to shoot these in. And I tested it out with, like, I had like a glass bottle of Topo Chico and then some other stuff, just trying to get it right. And it wasn't great. Like, I've had people since they've seen it and they're like, yeah, where's this left edge of this bottle? And I've done more learning since then.
Right.
But that whole project was new to me, even like the pitching of it and the pricing of it. So I learned a lot from it. And now I also learned from it that that's more of what I want to do. That was like that first taste that I had in commercial, and I was shooting weddings full time, and I was like, I think I want to do this instead. So now here I am.
Nice.
What about you, Kenny?
Professionally, the thing that comes to mind is when I did the music video for that one band.
Okay.
And it was an overwhelming project. It was
So this wasn't your first music video, but maybe the first one on this scale.
yes.
Right.
And I kind of had to deal with figuring out how to juggle it all. And I mean, even just how to execute it, for each individual shoot, because it was a music video that involved, a lot of days of shooting.
Multiple locations.
Dealing with multiple people and different personalities.
Logistics and...
Yeah, a lot of that. And there was even a situation where you were there because you came out and helped me one day, which was like huge. And I had to deal with an individual. So part of figuring it out in that moment was how to figure out how to deal with someone that was a little difficult.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
plus someone who you didn't even know who he was, too.
Right. That the guy didn't even identify himself. He was actually the songwriter of the song, didn't let me know, but just kind of came up to me and just kind of like started giving orders.
So what's funny about this is, like, already there's the figuring out the technical or aspect or technique aspect maybe of a new thing, but there's also sometimes just figuring out how to work with people.
Man. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you were dealing with both in the same moment.
In the same moment. And I mean, just real quick, like the guy would just come over and be like, we need to shoot this.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, all right, if we have time at the end. That's kind of how I did it. And so we got to the end and he was just like, all right, he had like this list. And so at one point I stopped and I had to kind of control myself because I'm the type of I'm very easygoing, but when I get mad, I get mad. My wife knows. So I told him, I was like, wait a minute, I'm the videographer. I've planned things out. I have a shot list. You're coming to me and you're just giving me random things to do that doesn't fit in
with your idea.
Right, with the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And so he apologized. He was a little drunk too. He was a little tipsy. He wasn't drunk. He was a little tipsy. But just even in that moment, just figuring out how to be, what's the word?
Diplomatic.
Because you want to be professional, but at the same time, you want to be assertive too. You know?
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, if you're a hired professional, you should be allowed to
Do your job.
do your
Right.
job. Yeah.
Also working with no budget, which was an extremely difficult thing because
Yeah.
they wanted so much and I had to push back on that because even the idea that I gave them, there was a point where I had a conversation, with the main guy and I was like, look, we could do everything we talked about, but it's going to take money and I'm not spending my own. This is your project.
Right.
What do you want to do? It's your move. And that's just kind of how I handled it. But I learned so much from just like being thrown into the fire and figuring out how to get out of it,
Right.
So
Yeah, I look back at different things. My story is filled with times where people have asked me to do things, probably off the assumption that I knew how to do it. And I've just kind of been thrown into a position where it's like, good luck. And I remember in one instance with campus choir, actually, at Lee University, where I was asked to lead in a capacity where I did not feel comfortable leading because I was unsure of my own ability. And it was kind of a different setup than had ever been done before, whereas I was leading a group of people from a different position that they had been led before and things. And man, I remember they sat down with me and I literally said, I don't want to do this.
he wasn't sure he didn't want to do it.
But, anybody knows Mama John and she's across the table looked at me and said, well, you're going to do it.
Nice.
And because you're the one to do it and we believe in you. And I was like, oh, great. So I don't know how I did. I guess I did fine, but that's kind of like been a repeating theme in my life.
Would you say that was the first time that like you had been put in a position of not like a leadership position, but just like in a situation like that with that level of importance or significance? Like probably the first time or?
I would say no. I feel like you're thrown into like the impossible a lot.
Well, I would probably say no. However, this was it was different, I guess. I don't know. I say that to say like what the first thing that you said is I made up in my mind that like, I guess it's two things. Number one, I can figure it out. Like, and it's just like, whatever, whether it's starting a media company, whether it's, whatever it is, like, I just have made up in my mind, like, I'm going to figure it out. And then the second part of that is if I can't, I'll find somebody who can and, like follow their lead.
Yeah.
And I have people in my life, we're talking like basic figuring it out. Okay, this could be very broad, right? So let's make it very broad. And let's make it very simple. Like, when I traveled with that group, I traveled with a guy named Chris Carneal. And
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris, I hope you watch this and listen. If not, we'll tell you that we mentioned you so you do listen.
Hi.
But Chris Carneal is very knowledgeable of things. Kind of like David here, I told him today, he's just like, you get on a topic and he knows about that thing. So in my life, I have gravitated to those people because I'm like, wait, I'm gonna need that person at some point. Yeah. Like I'm smart enough to know that I'm not as smart as that person,
Yeah.
Or like they're gonna know something that I don't. And I do that with you guys. I default to you guys on things a lot. So like specifically like Chris Carneal, man, it's like, okay, I was in that position and here I am in charge of this, this, and this. And just going to that person and saying, hey, look, I'm not trying to be a superhero. And I see where you're gifted and talented in this thing. So I'm just going to let you know I'm going to be leaning on you. Okay? So, and me and Chris worked really well together. And I've always said, like, as soon as I can hire a person to do something, I'm hiring Chris Carneal. Like, I don't care what it is. Chris can do it. You know what I'm saying? So, because he's also one of those people. He's like, just figure it out. So I gravitate towards people that are like, I'm just going to figure this out. I love when I ask somebody, when they're like, hey, let's do this. And I'm like, how? And they're like, I don't know, but we'll do it. And it's like, great. Because in my experience, that's how everything starts. Like you don't, I just don't, I don't know if I've ever been like, okay, I know everything about this, so now I'm going to get started. It just doesn't work like that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Not at all.
But at the same time, there's people listening to this podcast who are like, man, if I knew how to do this, I would start doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, we made a joke on like the first or second episode of the podcast that we recorded. I made a joke at the end of it. We didn't even know how to release a podcast. You know, of course we were going to figure it out, and there's hosting websites and things like that. But like literally, we had recorded 3 or 4 episodes, started all this, bought URLs, done all of this stuff. And then like at the end of that episode, it hit me like, I don't even know what to do with these things we're recording.
Right.
But, you know, obviously we stopped recording. And then like, I think Phil was there and he was like, yo, so how does this work? And I'm like, well, we're just going to figure it out, you know? So, and that's like a simple example, but I wonder how people could take this and apply it to themselves like this. Here we are. Okay. We just signed a lease, right? We picked up a client this week that we're going to be doing some album promotion and some branding for. We sign a lease. We're in here now. Me and Polly were talking. It was like, okay, we got receipts from stuff that we just bought and invoices. And it's like, we got payments coming in, and it's like, okay, we're going to have to like save all this stuff and find somebody who understands taxes. Right? So for a long time, I've been afraid to jump into the business side of things. I've done independent contracting stuff. That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
You sign 1099, at the end of the year, you collect all of them, put them in the computer, you're done, you know. But when it comes to expenditures and the payouts and there's pass-throughs and LLCs and all these different things, I have no clue. So a lot of times it's like, well, I don't know that, so I can't do it. It's like now we're just like, I hope the IRS is forgiving because we're going to do the best we can. But again, you figure it out along the way. And what's dope is that as you run into people who've started businesses and done things, you find that they're like, dude, I didn't even, for 3 years, like I wasn't even doing this, you know, I didn't even know, you know. So it's just interesting to see like, there's 2 dynamics. And I've said this before to my nephew, that I've experienced 2 different type of people. There's the person that says, I can't do it. And there's the person that says, I'll figure it out. And it's the latter that usually get the bigger piece of the pie, you know, at the end of the day.
I was thinking too, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just on the topic of like going into something and ever really knowing and being like fully prepared for it. I was thinking, well, maybe there is a situation where people are, right? So I thought of professionals who have to go to schooling, like perhaps like a doctor or something to that nature, a lawyer. They take all this time to go to school, but they still only have like book knowledge. They don't have the application. They don't know, like when you go to however many years of schooling to become a nurse, but you don't know what it's going to be like on a day to day.
It's like memorizing a cookbook, right?
Sure.
Like
Go on.
Like you memorize the cookbook, you know exactly how that cake is made.
The recipe, yeah, you have it.
But until you actually start mixing up ingredients, and like we were talking about today, my mom made sausage gravy and biscuits this morning, and we went over to her house because we had family over there, and it's like my sister was saying, she's like, I've never figured out like sausage gravy. Like it's always either too runny or it's too thick. She knows exactly how to make it. But there's like that element of experience that, and we were talking about, it's like, if you made it every day, you would begin to get the feel. You would see, okay, that's what it looks like. Now I need a little bit more. Now I don't. It gets a little thicker as you cook it. So you make it maybe a little
Runnier
more
at the
runny
beginning.
at the beginning,
Yeah.
you know, and those things. So it's like, yeah, you can get the education. You can be educated. I think that's what you've heard people talk about this before in the professional world. It's like, you know, and it was probably us after college. You come back like thinking you're so smart. And then you actually sit down, you know, with people who've been doing something for a few years, and you're like, oh, I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, I mean that's what I'm saying.
I'm hungry, so I thought about sausage gravy.
Sausage gravy.
I also
Sausage.
think that it takes a level of self-awareness to deal with figuring out, or to coming to the arena of figuring out. Meaning just knowing or being comfortable with the fact that you don't know everything. And then on top of that, there's also so many things you can do to prepare when you don't know everything.
Right.
Like you were talking about how you had to do those shoots and you were just like, I got to figure out how to do this. Well, you know, there's things you could do before. I know I had a meeting one time with a bakery client, and I wanted this client so bad, but I had never shot anything like that. So instead of going in there saying, dang, I don't know, but I'll figure it out, you know, what I did is I did figure it out beforehand. And I shot something in my kitchen, and then I showed it to them. They were like, this is awesome. But I figured it out before even stepping into that, you know.
Sure.
What do you think that it is? Because I think I know what it is. When people just stop with, oh, I don't know. So there's probably a couple
Fear.
things. Fear was
Personal
the first thing I
responsibility.
thought. The second thing I thought might just be laziness.
Yeah, for some people. Yeah.
So, or like learned dependency. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, if I just say I don't know how to do it, somebody else does it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or somebody will do it for me. So it's like, start the dishwasher. I don't know how. And they go do it.
That's
It's
a
like,
dangerous mentality.
right.
to
And that
have.
person is just like, oh, hey, that's it. If I just don't know how to do things, I don't have to do them. You know what I'm saying?
But then you'll always be dependent. Like,
well,
Some
right.
people don't care.
So yeah,
I
yeah,
can't.
that's true. But so you're talking fear. What was the other one?
Learn dependency.
Laziness, learned dependency. I guess those two probably hand in hand.
Yeah.
Man,
Self-doubt.
Self-doubt, right? There may just be generally people who just
Don't think.
believe, like, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a case with a lot of like our older relatives when it comes to something they have to do that
Like
involves
technology.
They're like, you know, like I overheard a conversation with your mom and some ladies at church, and they were talking about one of the ministries was adopting using the band app for communication,
Right.
and it was just funny to listen to the conversation because they were like, you know, like, oh, this person had to show me this, like, I don't know, I still don't get this.
Right.
You know, and it's, you guys have probably come up with those situations or they're like, just do it for me, please. It's like, or you could learn.
I just can't.
Because that's the thing.
Can't do it.
That's the thing, though. This is what, and
It's hard.
there's some people in my life I've gotten into it with because they're like, help me. And I'm like, no. Not because I'm mean, not because I don't want to, but because in my life, if people would have helped me with certain things, I never would have learned them.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of like enabling people if you're like, okay, I'll help. You know, and I do it intentionally to my 3-year-old daughter sometimes where she's like, help me. And I'm like, no, you got it. And she's like, I can't do it. And I can't think of an example right now, but I'm like, yes, you can do it. And then she doesn't. And she's like, I did it. And I'm like, see? Like, there you go. So it's like, even from a young age, trying to teach her, like, you know, don't just default to, I need help.
Right.
Like, figure out a way to make it work.
Teach a man how to fish. You know?
You can give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man a fish, he eats for a lifetime.
There you go.
I was thinking of the Parks and Rec twist on that. And Ron was like, he's like, or don't teach a man to fish and you eat yourself. You could eat yourself or something like that. And you always know, he's like, fishing's not that hard. That's what he says.
And whenever it comes to like that moment of silence, I'm like, is this conversation done? Or did we do it?
Yeah.
This was a quick one though.
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Anybody else? Is there any other thing about figuring it out?
I already got it all off my chest.
I think
I don't know why
I think what you said about your daughter is important. Sometimes when someone doesn't know something, it's important to instill confidence, right?
Right.
If it involves a situation of self-doubt, or perhaps an apprehension or fear, like you said, Kenny, sometimes it just needs the encouragement and or showing the person, but at the same time saying like, learn this because I'm not showing you again. You can do this. You know, you don't need to depend on me for it.
Which is what I do in the groups that I lead. You were in the meeting last night where I just leave. Because a lot of times, especially like if you're a leader, and I do have a strong personality and I get passionate and I speak a lot and things like, and I understand that about myself and I understand how people view me. So literally there's sometimes like I've talked to Austin, it's like, I just can't be in there because in this group, when I walk in the room, everybody just defaults.
Yep. Jeremy, what do we do?
Right. And I don't want that because
Yeah.
I want to empower people to take ownership and make their own decisions. But because of the position that I'm in, and it's funny too, because I used to go, like for instance, we went to a big church one time and it's pastored by a guy who started as a musician, like a worship leader. And, you know, so they get up there and it's his church, but he doesn't lead worship. Right. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, this dude's not even like in the room. And they're like doing worship and they're doing worship. And I'm like sitting there and I'm like, where's this dude at? Well, then he comes in like, you know, during worship, walks in from the back, gets on the front row, and then like at the end, like walks up. And I'm like, oh, okay. And there was part of me that's like he's trying to be Hollywood. Right. That's what I thought then. It's like, oh, he's trying to like make an entrance. Like I'm too important for that. Now looking back, I'm like, I'm wondering if it's because when he walked in, everybody started going, like, what do I do? And it's like, I wonder if he figured out that, I don't know, it could be wrong. Could be Hollywood thing. But that's what I used to think. Now, I'm like, yo, I wonder if this dude just understood or experienced that when he was in there, his worship leader was like, what does he want me to do?
Just
He
his
was a
presence got in the
distraction
way.
just being
Yeah.
in there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like kind of like check myself too. It's like, yo, maybe he had good motives and not was trying to be like the man. You know what I'm saying?
That's interesting because you know what? And this is something I've always realized about myself, but I just thought about it. I work better when I'm not dependent on other people.
Right.
Meaning-
Do you like working alone?
Not necessarily working alone,
Right.
but I just need to do my thing. Like I can
You
work
just
with
like
other
room
people.
to breathe.
Right. Give me my part and let me do it. If I'm working under someone, which I'm fine, I don't have an issue with that.
Right.
But I think I don't work as efficiently when someone's like over my shoulder telling me what to do. Unless I just have no idea what I'm doing. That's different. That's someone teaching me, you know?
Right.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say like it's a very dangerous position, especially like young people, because the learned dependency thing is something that Elise, who is a school teacher, told us. We said we were asking like when we were in the high school or middle school, were we like some of the kids that we were experiencing at the moment, saying like were we like that? And she said no. She said it was different. You guys were crazy and acted like idiots, but that she's even seen over the years being a teacher so long that like her current students, it's learned dependency. That their parents have just done everything that they've said they didn't want to do or couldn't do. Man, that's dangerous, man, because then
So
it puts you in a
dangerous.
position where you're a victim.
Yeah.
You're waiting for everybody else to do everything for you. And it's, man, it that can be a dark, a dark road to go down. And on the flip side of that, what a beautiful world it is to live in, to say, I might be able to do that thing. And then to begin the process of discovery and to begin the process of learning and building yourself and then developing a new skill that you didn't even have.
It's so rewarding when I've figured out
Oh, yes.
like a new thing. Like even if I don't know it, like the lights at church, like when like the pieces started to come together, I was like, I hit this button, this
like,
thing happens.
yeah.
I'm like,
feels so good.
You know, like one of my proudest moments is when I wrote the first book that I wrote, because I had been writing some blogs and I'd written some articles that were published on some pretty big websites. And I was like, yo, this is cool. And then I was like, to me, there was a type of person that wrote a book. So I remember this was the summer of 6 did not.
I still have a copy, by the way.
Probably 2015 or 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we had just redone our back porch. So we like put the carpet, everything was nice. It was screened in. Summertime was hitting.
You were working out there.
Phil gave me
remember.
this Jamaican juice. I don't know what it was, but it was good. It was like hot pink. It was great.
Ting?
No, I don't know. But I just drank it and liked it. But I remember sitting out there every day for hours. And I remember I can't remember how many words it is, but in the document, it's like 200 and something pages. And I remember like getting to the end and like, I had an outline, but I kind of created it as I went. You're like, oh, that would be cool to talk about too. I could put that there. And I remember I got to the end and my last thought, I closed it out and I was like, save. And I was like, I just wrote a book. And I remember that feeling of and then I remember the feeling of like not even remembering what was in half of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you write for so long. And I remember sitting there and I was just like, and I remember going back, I put like print layout where you could see like 8 pages at a time or whatever. And I had like the table of contents and I started going through the chapters and I started seeing like my subtitles and like, like the header and footer with the chapter titles. And I was just like, I organized all of this information. I had this idea. And it was just like this moment where I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even realize the scale of what I was doing because it took so long and in little increments of time and everything. Like, it's so rewarding. And like, the funny thing is the same thing with the podcast. I had no idea what I would do with that. And thus far, I've done nothing with it. It's just like something I did for myself, But like, such a rewarding moment. I didn't need anybody else to know. I didn't need anything. It was just like, wow, like,
yeah,
this is cool. And we've done it when we've branded the companies, the things we did a few years ago. We've done it with the Miserable Company, where it's just like this idea, and it expanded and it expanded. And how do you do this? I don't know. How do you do this? I don't know. How do you do this? I don't know. Boom, boom, boom. And you just start stacking these things up. And again, we talked about how limitations are like the breeding ground for creativity. And, here it is. Like, we want to shoot this concert. How do we do it? And you figure it out as you go. So whatever it is, man, like somebody out there listening and you've been hesitating, you've been waiting. We talked about getting started just a couple weeks ago. And probably somebody has got started on something and has been like, well, I don't even know how to do this thing. Like, doesn't matter. Just go. Now, unless it's something like skydiving.
Open heart surgery.
like open heart surgery. Like, probably don't want to just learn on the fly. But, for what?
Let them do it. Let them do it.
Where does this one connect to?
But for the context of what this podcast is normally talking about, man, just go out there and tackle it and don't be afraid to fail. That's another thing, man. There's no such thing as failure as long as you just keep going. It's just a stepping stone.
What's that quote? The only failure is the failure to try.
Thank you, Yoda.
Fail, you must not.
All right, man. Well, that was a good episode.
Good. Yeah.
That was, you got to do that every episode now.
Fuego.
Oh, gosh. Another Spanish podcast. Paul, you want to take it away?
Ocho.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Miserable Podcast. We had a great time. Paul, you can make noise now. Ew.
That was nasty.
Miserable.